The Maldives, once a fishing village, now better known as a high-end tropical island paradise. President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom has made this South Asia's richest country. But Asia's longest-serving leader is now fighting the political battle of his life in the country's first multi-party presidential election. His opponent, Mohamed Nasheed, a former political prisoner who has galvanized the opposition. In this edition of 101 East, we ask both men why Maldivians should vote for them. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim in Malé, the capital city of the Maldives. Despite the country's riches, many people here still live in poverty and have never known true democracy. But now, Maldivians have a chance to choose a new leader. Later on, both presidential candidates speak to us exclusively. But first, Chan Tao Cho reports on election fever gripping the nation.
Ahmad Nazim and his family live in Malé, capital of the Maldives. 40 of them packed into 6 tiny units behind this door, which opens up to a stifling narrow corridor.
So who lives here? This is my younger brother Susan. This is his territory. This is his wife and 3 children are here.
Ahmad Nazim has lived here all his life. Malé, the world's most congested capital city, fits 100,000 residents on an island that takes only half an hour to walk across. Many of them live like this. Nazim is tired of having to step outdoors just to get fresh air. Is this election important to you?
Yeah, very important.
Why?
So because we need a change. Mr. Maumoon Abdul Gayoom here already have 30 years left now. But still we are in this condition.
Actually, most people are not living below the poverty line. I think that's a line that the opposition has solved very often, and that is now sticking to people's minds. But the studies conducted by the UN in this country shows that our poverty levels have actually been decreasing over the last 30 years.
Driven by tourism, the Maldives has become South Asia's richest country. But away from its famed luxury resorts, it's estimated at least 1 in 5 Maldivians live in poverty.
Most of the income from the tourism sector are taken out. There is no tax system at all, and there is no way where we can retain the profits from the resorts as well, because you find that there's a huge amount of expatriate population that's working in the Maldives as well, so that also goes out.
This is the first time Maldivians have had a choice in who leads them. This follows President Gayoom's democratic reforms after violent protests against his regime in 2003, when his security forces killed and injured prison detainees. 6 candidates, including President Gayoom, ran for office earlier this month. He topped the list with 40% of the vote. His nearest contender, Mohamed Nasheed of the Maldivian Democratic Party, came in with 25%. With neither of them securing more than half the vote, Gayoom and Nasheed will now contest a runoff on the 28th of October. But will the vote be free and fair? With 1,200 islands scattered across the Indian Ocean, the first round election saw many problems with voter registration.
We took office on 4th of last month. With the short time we were able to send out the ballot papers and the voters lists for different polling stations at the last minute. Some islands, they reported they have received the wrong list in wrong place, and number of names were missing in the list.
One of the islands that encountered such irregularities is Guraidu, about 2 hours away from Malé by ferry. Many of the islanders here who applied for a new identity card in order to be able to vote have been left feeling frustrated and forgotten. They've waited 3 months with no news, when it usually takes no more than 3 days for an application in Malé to go through.
I applied for an identity card months before the first round election. The card was issued within 1 month with someone else's photograph. So I applied again, and I'm still waiting.
For the second round ballot, authorities in Malé say they are racing against the clock to iron out the problems. Affected voters are impatient for them to get their act together. And people like Ahmad Nazim can't wait for the next government to sort out their families' housing problems.
If they are taken care of us, we don't have to stay in this area.
For more on Maldives' first multi-party election, we are joined by President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom. Thank you very much for speaking to us, sir. You've been in power for the last 30 years. Why has it taken this long for you to introduce true democracy and allowing opposing voices in Maldives' politics?
In fact, I've been introducing democratic principles to the country from the very beginning, from 1978 onwards. But you must recognize the fact that at that time we were a very poor, underdeveloped country. We didn't have even food for our people. We didn't have any sort of education, and our health services were very, very low indeed. So people were not ready for any modern form of democracy. I've been able to achieve great progress socially and economically during the past 30 years. So now we are ready. We are ready for democratic reform. That's why 4 years ago I introduced this new agenda of reform.
You don't think the 2003 riots had anything to do with pushing you into
It didn't have anything to do
democracy?
because this has been in my thinking from the very beginning. Even when I took office in 2003 for this term, I explained this to the people. In my presidential address, I mentioned that I'm looking forward to changing the constitution and that I'll be calling the People's Special Majlis to do that. And this has been in my thinking from the very beginning. So any events, either domestic or external, had any influence on my thinking.
In the first round of presidential elections, though, 60% of the ballots went against you. Were you surprised with that, especially after 30 years of being in power?
Let me say that 60% of the vote did not go against me. We were 6 candidates vying for the job, and if you divide 100 by 6, you get 16%. So getting 40%.
Still, you got 40%.
Yeah,
only 40% of the population voted for you.
When you consider the situation,
it's not even half mark.
Yes, I'm sure that I can reach that in the next round. But what I want to say is 40% is quite good, considering the fact that we had 6 candidates contesting the election. It is a very,
but
very
it also
good
means that 60% don't want you
No,
on
indeed
board.
not. It doesn't mean that. But their first choice, for various reasons, could have been somebody else. But now it's up to me to prove that I have got enough votes in the second round to be president. That I'm confident I will do.
Let's look at some of the major campaign issues involved in this particular election. Now, this country is suffering from a major drug problem. 21% of the population is living in poverty. There is a major divide between rich and poor, and it is an increasing divide. How do you hope to resolve these issues in the next 5 years, in the next term? Issues that you could have addressed in the last 30 years.
First, let me tell you, those figures may not be accurate. But I must also say that the drug problem is a very serious problem here. We have been trying to tackle that for the past, say, 20 years, but we haven't been able to find a solution.
The same issue with poverty, though.
Poverty also, we have dealt with it quite well. I think we don't have the abject poverty that you see in the South Asian countries. You would never see anybody going hungry here. Nobody is...
But the reality of it, sir, I've walked through the streets of Malé and I have seen the reality of it. I've seen 7 families living in one room. I've seen people in sleep shifts, taking turns to sleep because they can't afford a house, a place of their own.
Afford a house.
And yet your country courts tourist dollars, millions of tourist dollars, and 21% live in poverty.
No.
Under your watch?
No, it is not true. You know, we have a housing problem like many other countries. Malé is a congested place. When I was young, there were probably 8,000 people living in Malé. Now we have 100,000 people. They have come. So this is a problem for congestion. But they have, you know, many of the people that you see sleeping like that have their own homes in their own islands. They are not living there. It's deserted. So it's not a problem that is of poverty. It is a problem of housing where people, for instance, come to Malé for various purposes. They want to live here.
But isn't that a problem that you should have addressed in your last 3 decades of rule?
We have been addressing this for the past so many years. We have so many housing schemes that have been that have been implemented in Mali. We have built a completely new island, Hulu Mali. That's the size is more than Mali itself. We now have thousands of people living there, very good roads, buildings, very good infrastructure. And we have converted a tourist island near Mali. It has become now a place where people live. We have done a lot of things, but the problem is such that we cannot solve it so quickly.
And the opposition alleges that under 30 years of your rule, the government has become corrupt, it's become inefficient, it's basically become a machinery that has helped you, your allies, and your family.
It's wrong. Of course, any opposition will say everything possible in order to win elections. So they are fabricating a lot of these things which are not quite true. There is no corruption to that extent. I'm sure, of course, I know every country has corruption, but the level of corruption in this country is much less than what you find maybe in the neighboring countries.
Well, let me just read to you a recent independent auditor's report which found that $3.7 million was issued in loans to unnamed individuals with no repayment expected, a cash gift of $563,000 given to 2 defense personnel, again no repayment expected. The state budget contravenes accounting principles. For the last 3 years, the IMF has said that your state expenditure is unsustainable. All this under your watch.
2 issues. One of the independent auditor's report is based on inaccurate facts. We have replied from the President's office. We know that this is politically motivated report. Although it is
an independent auditor's report.
It is not an independent in such. You can't be independent in the country where all sorts of political...
This is a man you appointed.
Anyway, I have appointed many people, but they prove themselves unworthy of their job.
Because they disagreed with you?
No, not disagree with you, because they
Because they found discrepancies in your system?
Of course not. I am taking legal action against him because he produced a report in 2 days before the election in order to reduce the chance of my re-election.
You have been known to arrest opposing voices before, though. You deny arresting political prisoners? You deny opposing?
I deny arresting.
You deny arresting Nasheed?
Nobody is above law in this country. So anybody who contravenes the law will be punished, will be arrested.
What law did he contravene?
So many laws. So many laws. There are so many laws he contravened. And he has been tried in court and he has been found guilty of an offense. There are no political prisoners in this country.
There have never been in your 30-year rule?
Prisoners. Anybody who breaks a law can be punished, whether he is an ally of mine, an opponent of mine, whether he belongs to my family or he belongs to any other family in the country. Everything is done according to law.
How do you rate your presidential rival, Mohamed Nasheed, as a politician?
Well, first of all, I don't think he has the experience to lead the country, neither the education, nor the moral character, because he is known to be making up all sorts of stories without any basis of truth.
You are Asia's longest serving leader. You have turned Maldives from a rural fishing village to one of the top-notch luxury destinations in the world. If you had a chance to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I think I've done pretty well. My record shows that I won't change anything.
Mr. President, thank you for speaking to us. After the break, we will speak to Mohamed Nasheed, the other presidential candidate, in what is now the turning point in Maldivian history.